She was standing on the edge, arms wrapped tightly around herself, hair tangled in the wind, tears drying on her cheeks. Her shoes were soaked from the rain, her phone long dead, and in her eyes was the kind of emptiness that comes only after fighting too long with no one fighting beside you. And just when she was about to give up, he whispered one word that brought her back. It all started a few months earlier, when life had not yet shown its sharpest edges. Amara was a quiet girl, the kind people often overlooked in crowded rooms. She worked at a small bookstore on 5th Street, her world wrapped around the scent of old pages and the comfort of silence. She wasn't loud, didn't crave attention, and rarely asked for help. But inside her was a storm, a past she never spoke of, a loneliness she never admitted, and a dream she kept buried under practicality. She used to paint once. Canvas after canvas of emotions she couldn't speak. But when her father died suddenly, everything changed. Her mother fell into a deep depression, bills piled up, and Amara had to drop out of art school. The paints dried. The brushes gathered dust. And each day became a battle just to keep going. By the time winter arrived, Amara had mastered the art of pretending. She smiled at customers. She nodded politely when people asked how she was. She told herself things would get better even when the heating at home broke, even when her mother stopped eating, even when the mailbox filled with final notices. But sometimes, strength isn't about carrying everything. It's about knowing when you're about to break. That day, the bookstore closed early due to the storm. The streets were empty, trees bending under the wind, and Amara found herself walking without direction. Her hands were cold. Her heart colder. She ended up at the old train bridge, the one people whispered about but never visited. Beneath it, the river raged with the rain, wild and merciless. She stood there for a long time, watching the water churn, her thoughts as loud as the storm around her. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. And just then, she heard footsteps. Slow, careful, approaching her from behind. She didn't turn. She didn't move. Maybe she was hoping the river would drown it all, her pain, her past, her exhaustion. But then, a voice, soft, deep, steady, cut through the chaos. "Breathe." One word. That's all he said. Not "don't do it," not "think of your mother," not "you have so much to live for," all the things people say when they don't understand the darkness. Just breathe. It wasn't a command. It wasn't even advice. It was a reminder that she was still here. Still capable of one small, life-saving thing. She turned slowly. He was just a stranger. Late 20s maybe. Drenched from the rain, hood pulled low, eyes kind. He didn't come closer. He didn't ask her name. He just stood there, as if holding the space around her, as if making it safe. Amara stared at him, confused, caught between anger and relief. "Who are you?" she asked, voice trembling. He shrugged. "Someone who's been there." And somehow, those words meant more than 1,000 sympathetic glances ever had. They ended up sitting under the bridge together for an hour. Not talking much. Just breathing. Listening to the rain. She didn't tell him everything. She didn't need to. He seemed to understand the silence better than anyone else ever had. His name was Caleb. He worked at the community center just down the street, organizing art workshops for teens, helping with food drives. He told her that he once stood where she was. Different place, same edge. What saved him was someone whispering the same word he now offered to her. Over the next few weeks, Amara found herself thinking about that night more than she expected. She started visiting the community center. Not to talk, just to sit, sketch a little, and breathe. Caleb never pushed her. Never asked questions. He just handed her a brush one day and said, "If you want to remember how to speak without words, paint." So she did. At first it was messy, colors bleeding into each other, emotion with no shape. But slowly, a rhythm returned. Her hands remembered. Her heart began to thaw. She even started selling a few pieces at the local art fair. One day, a girl came up to her and said, "Your painting made me feel less alone." That was the first time Amara cried out of something other than pain. Her mother started getting better too. The house warmed up again, both in temperature and in spirit. And while the bills didn't vanish, Amara no longer faced them with dread. She had something to fight for again. A purpose. A spark. One afternoon, as she stood before a new canvas, sunlight pouring through the window, Caleb walked in with 2 cups of coffee. "You look different," he said. "I feel different," she replied. Then, after a pause, she asked, "Do you ever think, maybe the word breathe saved my life?" Caleb smiled. "No. I think you did. The word just reminded you how. And maybe that's the truth we often forget. Sometimes we wait for miracles, for someone to pull us out of the darkness with grand gestures. But healing starts small, with a breath, a brushstroke, a word. Now, Amara teaches art once a week at the same center. She tells her students, your story isn't over. Even if today hurts, tomorrow might surprise you. She doesn't share all the details of that rainy night. But sometimes, when someone looks like they're on the edge, she leans in and whispers the same word that once saved her. Breathe. Because even one small word, spoken at the right time, can bring someone back to life.